Yeah, so if you're an Australian living overseas and you own Australian properties or you're thinking about buying one in the near future, the rules have been changing. So the 2026 budget and the financial year, the lenders have been really changing how they assess your income. And what we're finding is a lot of clients now, things that worked 12 months ago no longer work now. And that could mean a lost deposit or their finance is just collapsing a couple of weeks from settlement. So I thought I just want to do something a little differently. So I got two people here with me, one from the tax side and one from the buying side, right? And we're going to walk through exactly what changed, what it means for you, how not to get caught. So let's get into it. But quickly, just some context on why we can even talk about this. So at Odin, we exclusively just work with Australian expats and foreign investors, help them build and manage Australian property wealth from overseas correctly without making any irreversible mistakes. So just in the last 12 months alone, we've submitted over 900 loan applications, averaging $1 million. And all time, we've lodged over $2.6 billion in loan applications. So that's the experience that I'm bringing to this. On the buying side, we got Mark. Mark's the founder of Y Property. He's been a buyer's agent since 2009 and have negotiated more than 1,500 properties. Him and his wife, Tony, are not just advising from the sidelines. They themselves have over 13 properties. Is that right, Mark?
That's right.
Yeah. So he actually walks the talk. So Mark, good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
And on the tax side, we got Alan Kwan. So Alan, he spent 4 years inside the ATO, the Australian Tax Office, running reviews and audits on high net worth individuals. So he knows exactly how the Australian Tax Office is thinking. But before that, he was working at KPMG, doing cross-border tax for high net worth individuals. So I feel like he knows both sides of the
experience.
things.
On the other side of the fence now, the insider info.
Yeah, so he's actually now an Aussie expat himself, based here in Hong Kong. So with that in mind, I think a good segue would be to talk about tax, right? Especially all of the changes that has been happening. Was it the budget in May?
So the formal announcement was 12th of May of this year. It's very novel right now. It's a hot topic. Have both of you gentlemen had much in the media? Have you seen any headlines recently? There's a lot of kind of fake news out there.
It's unmissable.
Yeah. It's on everyone's feeds, I think. But like I said, it's quite fresh news. Yesterday, the actual bill got passed through the two houses of Parliament, first through the House of Reps, then Senate. So it has moved quite quickly over the last few months, I'd say, from the announcement. And it's caused a lot of stir, both for Aussie residents and expats as well. So we're going to use this session, I guess, to chat through it.
So I think what a lot of our Australian experts want to know is, based on that 2026 budget, because it's July now, nearly it's June, but we're just about to hit July, end of financial year. So what has actually changed for Aussie expats and what hasn't?
Yeah, that's a great question. So probably the biggest two topics are the negative gearing changes, which has caused a lot of stir. I guess as a summary, it hits harder on those Australian residents who potentially are working in Australia, have the employment income. And then there's the capital gains changes, so the kind of new indexation rule. So we can have a chat about how that affects expats, Aussie residents as well, because there is a bit of difference and nuance. I guess, like I mentioned, the bill has passed through the Houses of the Parliament. So it's waiting for royal assent, which is where the Governor-General kind of signs off. But basically, it will be law quite soon. I guess starting off on negative gearing. So that is the big topic, something that people have enjoyed for a long time now. In terms of how it affects expats, the kind of change isn't too drastic. Again, we've seen a lot of people up in arms about it. Have you both personally heard of maybe some clients who are quite worried about it?
I think the initial one is they're thinking our clients are thinking like negative gearing is scrapped entirely. But that's I don't know. You can tell us.
So Mark, have you heard, what has the sentiment been in terms of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, there's basically three camps. So I find that the people who are maybe first-time investors or not that experienced can be very fearful and think that this is the end of property investing as we know it. We've got other people who are, not so worried, where they're more sitting on the sidelines, just wait to see what happened. They're not necessarily wanting to sell. They're not necessarily wanting to buy. They're just like, well, let's just push pause. And then we have a number of other people as well who see this as potentially an opportunity coming up, where there's a lull in the market, a buying window.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Mark said, there's different sentiments out there. People who have properties already, which may be kind of in a loss position. People who may just be thinking about buying a property now. They're wondering if they should put a pause on it, like Mark said, or just commit because there's maybe a dip in the market. Just to break down kind of the negative gearing changes for everyone, it's really a change in how the losses can be utilized. So previously, if your kind of rental property was in a negatively geared position, so you had more losses than rental income coming in, particularly if you do have that financing, interest expenses that are deductible, then you could use those losses basically every year to offset not just rental property income or capital gains, but also your Australian employment income. So that's really was the main benefit for negative gearing. People were working in Australia with Aussie employment income and able to just reduce their tax bill because of their negatively geared property. So the good news is, if you do still have those properties that were purchased before budget night, 12th of May, then you can still use your properties in that old kind of traditional way. So nothing changes for those existing property holdings. It's more so for those clients who, say, buy a new property after the budget night. And there is a distinction between buying a kind of a new property, so not a secondary older property, versus buying a kind of, exactly. So for the people who buy new builds now, there could be vacant land, that could be maybe building a duplex or something, then you can still use the losses that you accumulate on the property every year to offset your Australian income. So again, for a lot of our clients who live overseas as non-residents, generally they're not reporting their overseas income to the ATO, and they don't have kind of Australian employment income. So in that way, the kind of negative gearing rules don't really hit hard on the non-resident expat community. It's more so the Australian residents. So like I said, if you do buy a, say, new build after budget night, then you can retain the old negative gearing rules. For a lot of people who may not choose to buy the new builds, if you do buy a secondary existing dwelling, then the change is not really that significant because, like I said, if you're a non-resident living overseas, you don't have Australian employment income. But what the government is allowing is you can still accumulate the losses, but you can only use it to offset, say, rental property income and capital gains, which is not a bad deal. So for example, it seems like you can use the maybe losses from a new property you buy after the budget night to potentially offset kind of rental income on your first property. So
so is the losses now, the negative gearing losses are now just quarantined to the property itself now?
Exactly,
right? Yeah. So you can only use the negative gearing credits or losses against that property's rental income, you said, and or any future gains, like if you sold that property, any profits on that.
Exactly.
So the biggest thing was like you're now no longer able to use it to offset your Australian salaried income.
Exactly.
But for our clients as Australian expats, they're not living or working in Australia anyway. So it's really a very minor change in the grand scheme of things. As for Aussie expats, you can still get negative gearing, it seems. Whether you buy old or you buy new, you still get negative gearing in relation to that property.
Exactly, yeah. So again, it's more so a change in how the losses can be utilized. Again, they're kind of granting the older negative gearing rules to the new builds just to incentivize kind of new construction, that innovation, that new supply, which is probably something you know about, Mark, as well. So that's really the down low on the negative gearing changes. Again, potentially if you're living in Australia as an Australian resident, this hits a bit harder to you because you can't use the losses from a property that you buy after budget night to offset your employment income.
Essentially, you can't claim it each year. Either when you sell the property, that's when you're able to claim those losses. Or the rent becomes positively geared after a number of years because the rent's gone up over time.
Yeah.
Or you've paid down the loan a little bit.
Exactly.
So it becomes positive. You're getting positive rental income. Then you're able to offset those losses.
Exactly.
So it's sort of deferred to as opposed to getting it each year.
Exactly.
And that's what we're seeing with the borrowing caps of coming down. I'm sure.
Yeah, actually, I've got a question for you, Mark. So, so there's not much implications for expats, as we have determined, right? Because we don't have Australian employment income in the first place. So we're very happy that, you know, the negative gearing can still be applied to the property itself. Nothing has changed.
Yes.
But maybe just a distinction between, for our Australian expats, they would like to know what kind of implications this would have for the Australian residents, you know, like in relation to the property market. Do you think?
Yeah.
So now that they're no longer able to apply this to their Australian employment income.
So obviously it affects the market sentiment, which we've sort of touched on a little bit before. But in terms of the borrowing capacities, doesn't necessarily affect expats, but for people living in Australia, their borrowing caps come down. And we're seeing that being affected by maybe about 10, 15%.
Okay.
Where the borrowing cap comes down, which basically means they can't borrow as much money, and therefore, you know, potentially instead of buying 2 or 3 properties, now they can borrow 1 or 2 properties. Yeah. So it's less money that they're able to get. But then I've also heard through local Australian brokers that there may be something, because the banks obviously want to lend money. That's how they make their money. They're looking at other ways where they can start to lend more, and that might even be something along the lines of looking at 40-year loans or something like that. Okay. So they might start, this is not immediately, but over the next sort of 6-12 months, they'll probably look at ways where they can open up some more borrowing capacity again.
Yeah, so there's the borrowing capacity perspective, but there's also that perspective of, oh, I now have to pay more tax on my, like, you know, before, I feel like there was a prevalent thought with Aussie residents whereby if they bought investment properties in Australia, they saw that as a way of not only earning money on the side through the investment Australian property, but they also saw it as a way to reduce the tax burden on their own income. And so for that to have been removed, whether that would have any downstream impacts on lower demand, like that's no longer as, you know, exciting or
well, it hurts the cash flow as well. So it's not a tax saving, which means it's on a weekly basis. If you're buying property or investing in property, it means that it's going to hurt your pocket a little bit more on a weekly basis and most Aussie investors are mum and dad investors. Like they might have maybe 1 or 2 properties and they're contributing that extra and with living costs being so high already, they are becoming more reluctant now with these changes, because it's like, oh, that's extra money out of our pocket every week. Can we afford that extra property? So I mean, even in the last, let's say, you know, 3 to 4 weeks since this has all happened, we've seen the interest in investing come to a standstill. Like investors have just really paused. And for a number of reasons, maybe they don't want to, maybe they're trying to figure out how this really affects what they're doing, so they're not buying more. Or, like I said, those people who have seen it as potentially an opportunity coming up for them, they're having to go back to the broker, seeing what their new borrowing capacity is, or they're going back to the accountant and seeing, well, what structure am I buying in? Is it, because there's been some changes, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Do we buy in the trust still? Do we buy in a company now? Do we go back to buying in a personal name? So they're having to seek that advice. And so they've literally just gone, we need to talk to the accountant and broker before we do anything.
I've started seeing some ingenious solutions coming up, some creative accounting. Actually, there was one where I saw whereby you would buy in a company. We don't need to go deep into this one, but I heard that you could buy the property in a company structure, and then have you as a personal individual lend money to that company. Okay. And then that company, and then because you're lending your own money to that company, you could claim it as a taxable deduction. So you could still somehow claim a tax loss and negative gearing effect in that sense of reducing your employment income. Now, obviously, there's a lot of moving parts, right? Like you're saying, you still got to go to Royal Assent, and there's still maybe some amendments to this in the following months.
Yeah.
Because a lot of this, is it taking effect on the 1st of July 2027, or is it taking effect as of 1st of July 2026 in next week?
Yeah, so there's a few key dates. 1st July 2027 is probably the most pivotal date in terms of when the negative gearing rules kind of will occur or take place, and also the indexation. I guess the previous kind of milestone as well is that budget night itself. So again, in terms of negative gearing, it's the properties you buy after budget night that are subject to these kind of two different streams now. So say, for example, you bought a property after budget night, it's existing dwelling, a secondary building. You can still use negative gearing in the traditional sense until 1st July 2027. But after that, it changes so that you can only use those losses built after that date to offset property income. So you have that kind of limited window. But again, if you do buy the new builds, either way, you can still use negative gearing in the
No change.
traditional. Yeah, exactly. But 1st July 2027 is when kind of the rules formally kick in. Again, like you mentioned, Ben, it's going to probably go through Royal Assent, get passed, become an act and legislation quite soon, within the next month or so. Like you said, there's always room for amendments, and in the explanatory memorandum to the bills, which is kind of some supporting material to explain how these rules might work, they did kind of point to some amendments in the future, and things can kind of revise over time depending on how the rules actually are applied, what kind of inequality it causes, etc. So
let's talk about the next biggest thing, right?
Yeah.
Because from what you said, the two biggest changes that come out of that would affect Australian expats were negative gearing, as we found out, not much changes.
Yep.
And then capital gains tax.
Yep.
So walk us through, like an Australian expat, if they own property and they want to sell, what's the CGT implications now? What are the capital gains tax implications now in 2026, 2027?
Yeah, that's a great question. And again, capital gains is probably the biggest second half of the whole conversation as well. So I guess as a baseline, capital gains, of course, it's a tax you pay generally on Australian property, no matter where you are, on the profits of that or appreciation of that property over time. But there's some nuance between, whether it's always been an investment property or kind of a former home or main residence, because there is that kind of main residence exemption that people can leverage if they do buy their family homes, which says you can be exempt from capital gains generally for the period that you lived in it, for the kind of growth of the property. But I guess what I see as a pitfall for a lot of our clients, and this isn't related to kind of the budget, but just generally, is that people want to sell their properties from overseas, their main residences, from overseas as a non-resident. And as you guys know, kind of in 2020, there were some rule changes which said, if you do sell your former home from overseas as a non-resident, then you can't actually claim the main residence exemption, except for very limited circumstances like potentially divorce and property settlement, or, for example, if your spouse or kids have a terminal medical condition. So it's a kind of pitfall I see a lot of clients get into, and it can end up in 5 to 6 figure capital gains. But that's not something directly related to the budget or that the budget touched. I think what you're alluding to, Ben, is that new indexation method that's going to kind of replace the 50% discount. So I guess for both of you, what has been kind of some initial thoughts that you've heard from clients, or maybe misunderstandings?
Yeah, so I think first of all, explain the indexation method.
Yeah.
Like what is the I think everyone is very familiar with the old method of capital gains tax, like the main residence exemption. You don't have to pay CGT at all if you lived in that property. Or the 50%, you get a 50% discount if you own that investment property for more than 1 year. I think everyone is pretty much aligned.
Yeah. So it's like simple maths. Yeah.
But in this indexation one, I still think a lot of people don't know what that even is. Can you just explain?
So it was an old method previously, I believe, before the actual 50%.
It was a thing before.
It was a thing before, I believe, quite a while ago, and they've just reintroduced it, I guess, to actually kind of tax or provide you a discount depending on the kind of realized growth of the property. So again, like you mentioned, Ben, previously there's that 50% discount. That's the rules before the budget. So like you said, quite simple, you get a 50% reduction in your capital gains if you kind of hold on to a property or shares for kind of 12 months or more.
But that was only for Australian residents, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So Australian expats never got any CGT benefits.
Yeah, basically 2012 again was
Yeah.
probably one of those pivotal dates when things changed for expats as part of kind of widespread rules where expats are kind of treated unfavorably. They just kind of shift the guardrails a bit. So since 2012, expats, non-residents specifically, we stopped getting the 50% discount. So,
Since 2012.
yeah,
It's been like for
2012.
over a decade now.
It
We haven't got
has,
any.
yeah, exactly. So
And it's worth
Yeah.
pointing out the obvious that you pay capital gains tax
Yeah.
when you make a profit.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
obviously, if you're not making a profit,
yeah.
you're not paying. So it's
Exactly.
only when you're making money, right?
Yeah, exactly. Great point, Mark. So again, what indexation does, so they're kind of scrapping the 50% discount from 1st July 2027. So again, that's the kind of pivotal date. So the gains you make on the property from 1st July 2027, they'll be subject to this new indexation method. So you'll get a discount on the capital gains, again, on the gain from 1st July 2027 to when you do sell the property later, in accordance with the CPI over the years. So kind of over the last 10 years, it will be maybe around 30% or so. Maybe.
Sorry, like 30% over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So it was like a
Maybe
2 to 3%
2 to
year on year.
3%
Like,
every
so just
year.
like on the inflation.
Exactly, on the
Inflation
inflation.
adjustment, right.
Yeah. So, for example, maybe your property is valued at $1 million on 1st July 2027, and then in 10 years, with 30% inflation, then instead of using a cost base of $1 million, it would be inflated to $1.3 million. So, it may give you kind of a slower discount, but eventually, for example, if you held a property for 40, 50 years, that discount could be more than 50%. So it is a change to kind of the method, but there is a layer of nuance that the budget has kind of underlined. So it's to do with how that indexation applies to non-residents, foreign tax residents of Australia. So have you heard much about that, either of you, in terms of how it specifically applies to non-residents or
The indexation
Yeah.
method or the new...
the
yes.
indexation?
Yep. Well, we did do a seminar last night and you guys did present.
And it was only
It was-
passed yesterday.
Yeah,
right?
It was
fresh,
very
yeah,
fresh
off the
information.
press. Yeah.
And I think if I was to repeat what I read, it was something along the lines of, if you are a foreign resident,
Mm,
and when they say foreign resident, it implies Australian expats living
Yeah.
abroad. Okay. If you are a foreign resident, and at any time during the testing period, and then they also define what testing period is, which is
Yeah.
the date that you've acquired the property to the date that you have a CGT event, which is pretty much when you sell the property. So pretty much when you acquire the property to all the way when you sell it. So it's like if you are a foreign resident over the testing period, at any point in time, then you would not be eligible for the indexation or just CGT benefits of the indexation benefits, right? That's kind of what I saw.
Yeah. So it's looking like a kind of black and white approach they're going to take. So like Ben said, there's a kind of testing period where they evaluate whether this indexation will apply to you. So that testing period's from kind of 1st July 2027, which is that milestone date when a lot of these rules will kick in, until whenever you sell the property. Maybe that's 10 years later in 2037. So in that period, if you were a tax non-resident or a foreign resident of Australia for tax purposes at any time during that period, then you won't be eligible for the indexation discount at all. So
For all your properties that you own, or only for the properties that you acquired from the 1st of July 2027?
for all your properties as well, we believe. So it's really looking at your residency.
Even that you previously bought one, so none of it's grandfathered.
Exactly, yeah. So it's not looking like it'll be grandfathered. So again, typically for us non-residents, then we'd get none of that discount anyways.
Yeah.
So it's really hitting at the Aussie residents who may have otherwise been able to use the 50% discount, or potentially non-residents who may want to go back to Australia as well and become residents.
So it hasn't really. So it hasn't. The capital gains side of things hasn't really changed for expats. It still remains the same.
Exactly.
We just don't get that benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So for, the long-term non-residents, people who, at least in the short midterm, don't plan to go back to Australia, then the position kind of stays the same. So we never got a discount anyways after 2012.
But did it previously? You didn't get the discount while you were living overseas, but when you went back to Australia, did you get the discount? The old 50% discount for the period of time when you were living in Australia. So that's now gone, that discount for when you moved back.
Exactly.
Because I was thinking about this as well. Perhaps you either just wear it that you don't get a discount even when you move back. So you say you're living in Australia for 10 years and you still don't get that discount. Or what you could potentially do as a way around not getting the discount is you could hold that property, make the growth and gain during that time, and then when you decide to move back, potentially you trade that property, so you sell, and now you're living in Australia, you buy. So you're just swapping to another one. You've got a new property when you're living in Australia that you now own, which is getting those benefits.
Yeah,
which might be a bit of a workaround if you're really chasing the tax benefits.
Yeah, exactly. So like Ben mentioned, you mentioned, no doubt kind of over the next few months, there's going to be a lot of planning before the rules take place. So that's why, the accountants, tax advisors, etc., they're going to be getting a knock on the door.
Yeah, I think the biggest one that was kind of like in my mind was like, surely this can't go into law. Well, this is going to, it's going to go to law. It's already been legislated. So I get that. But mainly the effects are coming from 1st of July 2027. So there's still a whole 12 months whereby some tweaks can happen.
Yeah.
And I believe tweaks will happen because the way that you just explained it, it's almost like suicide for all future aspiring Australian expats.
Yeah.
Right. Let's say if we have, because I also looked at the immigration data, 100,000 Australian citizens do move abroad for long term. Okay, that they become Australian expats, 100,000 every single year, and then obviously we have 100,000 repatriating back to Australia as well. So like net is around the same. But those 100,000 Australian aspiring Australian expats, they may no longer want to move abroad. Like for example, let's see these 100,000 Australian expats. Usually they're around 40 years old. And they already have one or two Australian investment properties. So if you're saying that if at any time I became a foreign resident, I immediately lose my CGT benefits, those guys will be like, I don't want to move abroad for work.
Yeah.
But when I look at the top 100 companies in Australia, like the BHP, Rio Tintos, like even like KPMG, EY and stuff like that, they have big bases outside of Australia. They got hundreds of employees outside of Australia. So anyone who relies on Australian talent overseas, that's going to hit them hard because no one wants to move abroad because they've already have, hey, my home, my 2 investment properties. All of a sudden, I'm not going to get grandfathered and you're gonna just remove my CGT. That's what I was thinking.
Is that correct? As in, let's say, obviously, I own property already. And let's say I came and lived here in Hong Kong. Would all those properties then any benefit that I had from existing properties that I've bought before that time, would the grandfathering be removed? And then I'm classed it. Then I'm paying.
So kind of the gain on the property from when you bought it to 1st July 2027, that'll still be subject to the kind of 50% discount.
Yes.
Say you were still an Australian resident during that time until 1st July 2027, then you kind of get the 50% discount on that gain. For people who have been in and out of Australia, to your point, Mark, like you mentioned, generally before you'd get kind of a pro rata of the 50% discount, depending on the years that you're a tax resident versus non-resident whilst holding on to the property. So it was kind of a fairer system. But when we're talking about the gains on your property, your existing properties from 1st July 2027 onwards to when you do sell it, so it's kind of going to be split in half almost, the calculation.
For existing.
For your existing property. Say, for example, you moved to Hong Kong, became a kind of tax non-resident from 1st July 2027, anytime.
I did that for 2 years, and then I moved back.
Yeah.
Those properties that I was holding previous or currently holding now, do they still get that 50% discount previously and then index, or do I lose that or is it only for any future purchases?
So it'll be lost, the indexation on the gains from 1st July 2027.
Right,
so
and I'm paying the full 47% or
exactly. So it's quite aggressive. Again, the way the 50% discount worked before was it's pro rata. It's quite fair depending on is you're a tax resident versus non-resident, but from the bill, from what they've kind of explained, it doesn't appear to be a pro rata calculation of the indexation. So it's kind of all or nothing if you have 1 foot in as a tax non-resident at any point, even though you do move back. Basically any point after 1st July 2027 to when you do sell it.
And even for properties that you were holding before this.
Exactly.
Oh,
So
which is why I think they're going to definitely make some tweaks to this bill, right?
Like, I would not move here. Like with my properties, then I'm giving so much more. I'm paying so much more tax.
So all pre-existing Australian expats, fine, but everyone who wants to now move abroad, aspiring expats, or maybe you repatriated back and then
property owners, they would.
They'll think twice. They'll think twice.
Yeah.
But again, there's so many massive Australian companies with locations and bases outside of Australia that rely on Australian talent overseas. I'm sure everyone's gonna be making a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, we should just move back to the reasonable, common sense approach, and let us apportion it.
I think if they become aware of it, right? Because it's being aware, and a lot of people might not. And I'm sure some people in bigger companies will realize it, but it's got to.
They essentially, I feel like they essentially rushed the bill, right? And obviously, expats are like this minute cohort of Australian citizens. So they obviously spent most of the time debating. Debating the Australian resident side of things, and then they put what did you call that? The wording on the amendment of the memorandum.
Yeah, so there was some wording in the explanatory memorandum. Again, it's just some supporting material to the bill, which kind of hinted at potentially some adjustments or amendments. But to your point, Ben, it seemed like this time around they really just wanted it to pass through both houses of the parliament as a priority. So like you said, Ben, fingers crossed they kind of do come to their senses.
We got 12 months.
Exactly. And then if things kind of do pass through Governor General, then hopefully there's some outroar. When these rules actually do start getting applied, then people can understand, hey, this doesn't look right, and then amendments could happen in the future. But it's kind of a wait and see. So it is quite crazy to think about that you could maybe eventually go back to Australia, even despite having periods of maybe living in Hong Kong, Dubai, Singapore, and not have that indexation at all. But that seems to be the wording that we can see right now. So
sure. So just on that topic, we can move over to the lending aspect. So as you're pointing out, Aussie expats in Hong Kong, Singapore, UAE, US, and the UK. Generally, that's where majority of our Australian expats are living. From a lending perspective, we're more or less still generally fine. Okay, so the budget impacted in the sense of the negative gearing. Okay, so the lenders right now are being cautious on that side and have removed the ability for us to use negative gearing add backs into the servicing calculator. Because usually when you apply for a mortgage application, they'll do the assessment, your income minus your expenses, and then what's left is how much you can borrow, right? But usually when we add back that negative gearing component, it reduces your taxable income. So you have more net income and therefore you can borrow more, as you've already pointed out. So obviously that has been removed. So that has put a little downward reduction in borrowing capacity overall. Not too much that I'll say though for Australian expats. So all of the lenders right now that we deal with over 30 lenders. And I'll say on often case we use 10 of them quite regularly, the big four included. They're still all lending. They haven't made any other drastic changes rather than removing the negative gearing. When I was in Australia a month back, some interesting things that the bankers were telling me was they did have some positives. Like one thing that they've noticed as a trend was because of the lack of supply in Australia, because of the construction and the trades, and while we still have all-time high overseas net migration, people coming from other countries over to Australia, started to see a lot of these properties, people subleasing rooms, and the banks have allowed us to now use extra, they call it boarders income. So like if someone is boarding in your home, your owner occupier property, they will allow us to use now $150 extra Australian dollars per week as boarders income. And that does add up to, on average, around $80,000 of increased borrowing. So hopefully that kind of offsets a little bit of the loss of negative gearing. But coming back to the point of lending, if you're in any of these countries overseas, yes, you can still get lending. In case like some people thinking that there's no longer the case. Although there was one lender, Macquarie Bank in Australia, but they put out 12 months ago, not due to the budget at all. They put out mainly because they found their niche market, which is just the cream of the crop, your lawyers, your accountants, anyone who's earning good vanilla deals. They just wanted to focus on that because for those Australian residents, they can turn around applications in 4 hours. But when they were dealing with Aussie expats through us, or through anyone who's living overseas, it was taking anywhere from 4 to 14 days to get approved. So like 10 times, 20 times longer because of the foreign income, trying to understand how Hong Kong income tax works and all that. It just added a lot of time. So they rather just focus on what they were good at. So that bank left. And the only other bank that also put out in the last several months was a bank in Singapore, HSBC in Singapore. So a lot of Australian expats don't actually believe that you can get lending outside of Australian banks. But you can. We have banks in Singapore and we have a bank in Hong Kong that will also lend to people and for Australian securities. That's something to be aware of. That unfortunately there's no bank in the US or UK that would do it. Maybe 10 years ago we had like Lloyd's Bank in the UK that would do it, but that's now no longer the case.
So what are the kind of expat friendly banks nowadays?
So it really depends on your country of residence. And so this is the thing that a lot of Aussie expats get wrong, because typically you move overseas and you're thinking, okay, I'm just going to go to the bank that I've always banked with. If I was banking with ANZ or CBA, when I go across, obviously I'm just going to apply through there. No biggie, no change. But depending on which lender you go through, they assess your foreign income very, very differently by up to 5x difference. Like someone could be borrowing 1 million through this bank, and on the same income, you'd only be borrowing 200,000. Okay, so to answer your question, it really depends on where you are living. So we're here right now in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has a low tax jurisdiction of up to a maximum of 15% income tax, relative to, as you know, 45% marginal income tax in Australia.
They need to talk more. And
look, the banks told me that the bankers tell me that Aussie expats live in over 100 different countries. We do not have the time or resources to try to understand the tax jurisdictions and how it works of all of these different countries. So we're just going to blanket. We know that Australian pays one of the highest taxes in the world. That's not a flex. That's not a good thing, by the way. So it's like, because we know Australians pay a very high number of tax, we're just going to apply Australian income tax onto your income. Okay. And we know that if you pass through there, we're going to be safe. But it doesn't make sense to someone living in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in the UAE or Cayman Islands or any of these low income tax jurisdictions. Because it's like, hey, I'm really paying no income tax in Dubai. Why are you putting up to 45%? Why are you halving my income? But that is what they're doing. And so if you just go back to the bank that you're used to, you're going to struggle. All right. So like the story that I shared in the seminar last night, our Hong Kong couple who was earning 2.5 million, HKD, thought they were safe because they were just buying a 1.2 million Australian dollar property, and their loan got declined essentially, okay? Because they had only this much deposit, they needed to borrow the 80%, but the bank would only lend them, the 40%. Didn't work, so it got declined. And then like, how is that even possible? We're earning this much money, we're living the expat lifestyle, we got so much disposable income. And that's because they do, those 3 haircuts that I talked about, and I can re-explain it here. Whereby they would discount, I'll just use easy numbers. If you're earning 100,000 Hong Kong dollars a month, they would discount 20% off the top for foreign currency fluctuation.
Okay.
Mainly because of the fluctuation between Hong Kong dollars to AUD. The banks are like, well, it's not static, right? It's not 1-to-1. Aussie dollars is not pegged, and it can fluctuate. If it moves the other direction, we want to make sure that you still be able to service the loan. So we already whack off between 10 to 40%, depending on bank. So they'll whack off 20% off there. So now we're only looking at 80,000 Hong Kong dollars.
Okay.
And then that doesn't end there. And then if you're earning variable income, like any allowances or bonus income, which is often the case for expat packages, they will shave off an additional 20%. So maybe on aggregate, we're now from 100 to 80, and then maybe that drops down, like a little bit more, depending on, the composition between your basic salary and your bonus. And then it doesn't end there, right? Because now it comes to the actual income tax. You're thinking, oh, well, I only pay up to 15% income tax in Hong Kong, but no, they're going to add on the 45% marginal income tax. So then we times that off, and we're looking at less than half of your income.
Wow.
So those people that would decline, how were you then able to go and help?
Well, they're in a panic right now, so you can imagine what they did, right? They're like furiously typing on Google or search or whatnot, like, Australian expat home loans or whatever it is, like who can help with this, and they reached out to us to see if it can be salvaged, right?
So important to make note, they would decline before they came and saw you guys.
Yeah.
And now you guys are working with them, right?
Yeah, because they talk to their mates back in Australia who are earning far less, that have been able to acquire 2 properties, like two $2 million properties, or 2 $1.2 million properties, and they're like, well, we're just buying our first one.
Yeah.
Easy, of course. I'll just go back to the bank. So obviously they actually signed the contract first.
Yeah.
Thinking it was all fine. So then they already had the contract. They were obligated. If they didn't get their loan approved, they would have lost their 10% deposit. 10% deposit on a $1.2 million property. That's 120,000 Australian dollars they were going to lose if they couldn't meet the obligations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so important. And we say this all the time, to have the right team, and to have the right team if you're an expat who specialize in, and that's why we like working with you guys, because there's so many nuances for people and pitfalls where you can lose 120 grand by signing a contract because you've listened to your mates at the barbecue or back home, or buying in the wrong entity, and sitting, because it's different for expats, and it's I think it's just having the right people and doing it first before just going in blindly.
Yep. So the biggest mind blown one would be like the ones from the UAE, right? If you're working in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, or Saudi Arabia, like Riyadh, those are the guys who are most shocked because there's 0% income tax. And now you're like, 45% marginal plus the 20% haircut shave. And it's hardly like, they're pretty much discounting, 70% of your income. But anyway, with that in mind, I just had a client call earlier today and they were asking, hey, do I need FIRB approval? Can I do this from outside of Australia? So I'll just address that in case other people are asking the same thing. If you're an Australian citizen living overseas, you do not need a Foreign Investment Review Board approval, all right? Because that's like a fee that you need to pay, right, Mark? Is that an FIRB? You need to pay something like, what's it, $5,000 to $10,000 or something for some?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well,
it can be quite a lot more than that. So it's kind of a approval that you need to get from the ATO or the government.
That's mainly just for foreign residents, because they think foreign resident, because that's like one of the lingo as well. Like from an ATO perspective, foreign resident Aussie expats are included in that. But when it comes to buying property, whether you need a FIRB for foreign residents,
Yep.
Australian citizens living abroad do not qualify under that. So yeah, you don't need to do
Yeah.
an FIRB approval. Awesome. Although I'll caveat it there with, it's like if you're buying with your spouse and your spouse does not have an Australian citizenship or a PR, you don't need it as well. You don't need an FIRB. So awesome as well. It's only if your spouse is the foreigner trying to apply by itself, then your spouse obviously does. So number one, do not need FIRB even if you are married with a foreign citizen.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other one was like, hey, do I need to fly to Australia for anything? Like open up a bank account or something like that, sign some documents. No, everything can be done from overseas. I would say like more than 95% of our clients do not set foot at all in Australia. Okay, everything can be done and approved, and the loan documents sent up from overseas.
Yeah, like you said, Ben, a lot of the nuances around tax residency and your citizenship. Like you said, if you're an Australian citizen living overseas, even though you're a non-resident, then you don't need that FIRB approval. Same goes with other kind of costs of purchase, like stamp duty. A lot of people think that because you're buying overseas, from overseas, that is, as a Australian citizen, that you need to pay that kind of extra foreign stamp duty surcharge, but you won't need to as an Australian citizen. So it's more so for the foreign nationals, people who don't have, for example, PR or Australian citizenship. So,
and especially for foreign nationals, it makes far more sense for them to buy brand new.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because the benefits there, because when they're buying existing, it's sort of really strongly discouraged. Like they're paying, stamp duty. The numbers don't end up stacking up. It really eats into any profit.
Yeah. Like you said, Mark, it's foreign stamp duty surcharge. It's FIRB approval. It's looking at maybe some land tax surcharges as well. So it can stack up quite a lot. Yeah.
So if an Australian citizen living abroad, an Aussie expat, does not need to set foot in Australia for lending, I'm curious about it from a buying property perspective. So how do Australian expats actually buy property without even looking at the property? Mark, so if they came to you, I feel like that's one of the things. I feel like they a lot of Aussies, they love property because they it's like tangible. They can see it, they can touch it, and then they have some emotional like bond with it. But for Australian expats, a lot of time they don't even fly back. So how does that process kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's a little bit different, even from other buyers agents as well. We are very hands-on, and it's a combination of research and data-backed research, and backing that with, or combining that with, on-the-ground research. One, it's when you get those two different angles. So you get all the data, and data by itself can be misinterpreted, skewed, manipulated. You can get the wrong picture just by itself. It can be old data as well that you're looking at, and so that's why we think. And we spend so much time actually in the suburbs and areas that we're buying and researching it and making sure that on the ground, what we're seeing is matching the data and it's telling the same story. And so I think it's critical whether it's a expat or someone who's living in Australia, that they actually spend not just a weekend in that particular suburb, but they really know suburbs intimately, and they know which streets are the good streets, which streets are the bad streets. Is there more owner occupiers in this particular pocket? Is there some high voltage power lines? Is there is there a bad smell from which looks like it might look like nice bushland, but there might be a bat colony which has a terrible smell and people don't want to live near it. And we go through each property and do a walk through video, and our videos are pretty raw and honest. They're trying to point out anything that might need maintenance or repairs. It's done on our iPhone essentially. It's not a glossy real estate video with nice panning shots that have been filtered. It's really going through and going, oh look, we might need to touch up the paint in this section, or the kitchen's dated, you need some new silicone here, or it's really trying to give people a realistic idea
Yeah.
as if they're going through the property
Right.
themselves.
So you guys are like the eyes and ears, and for the expats abroad, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we buy, all across Australia, and we go through those properties. It's people that either work for us or people that we know and trust that have gone through those properties doing that video for us. Yeah.
So for you, Mark, what are some of the pitfalls or things that people might not realize in these properties or locations that if they hadn't gone to people like yourself, your team, that they could have made a mistake with? So what are kind of the top things that you see?
The top things, the top mistakes that people make. Look, there's probably a list of things that we look to, like deal breakers, avoid. So they're all quite obvious, I suppose, for us at least. But they're things like, we don't want to be buying flood affected properties. So, it's a very easy check to check if something's flood affected. It might be things like if it's on a main road or backing onto a train line, high voltage power lines. There's a list of 20, 30 sort of things.
Yeah.
And there's less obvious ones as well, like next to a cemetery.
Okay.
And some people will be like, well, that's not a bother. But the reality is why we find those to be deal breakers, or we factor that in, is because a valuer will also factor that in. They'll write a note on that. They'll go to the lender, and the lender in some cases might not lend as much on particular properties.
Yeah.
They might ask for a bigger deposit.
Yeah.
But also there'll be a certain percentage of the population who will just not want to buy that property or live in that property to either rent or buy. So when the market becomes softer, whether it's the rental market or the selling market, we find that demand goes down. You might find it harder to find a tenant. You might need to take a little bit less rent if it's, say, next to a cemetery, for instance. Some people love living next to a cemetery and we've spoken to people and they're like, it's
Because it's
really,
cheap.
well, it's quiet. They said the neighbours are really quiet, which it sounds funny, but it's. But other people are just like, no way. It's not going to happen. We would never live next to it. And the same, and therefore it also affects in the same way from a resale point of view. When the market's softer, and let's say you want to sell during that time, you might find that it will be on the market for longer. You might find that you have to reduce the price more, as opposed to a property that's, 200 meters away or 500 meters away in a quiet street away from that detractor.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I mean, just let's face it as well, right? Like people are buying Australian properties with an agenda as well, which is to make money, right? So, and a lot of that money comes from the capital gains and from the rental yield, essentially, right? Like how much are people willing to pay to live in that property, to rent your property, and obviously the price of the property itself, and that just comes from demand, like you're saying. So we want to cater towards the majority of the Australian residents.
So if all be liquid, right?
Yeah.
That no matter what the market's doing, you want it to be an appealing property.
Yeah.
Even if the market has less buyers in it, you still want that property to be, that it's more easily sellable. You don't want other things that are going to pull away from it.
So essentially, you have like this very extensive, comprehensive, detailed checklist that you go through that is data backed.
Yeah.
On what, and you rank them or you score them.
What makes a good deal? What things we avoid? Is also very important. So let's say we get a property. We are always searching for properties both online and off-market deals. We get a lot of off-market properties because we've been doing it a long time, got a lot of good relationships with agents. So let's say we get a deal sent to us or a property sent to us. The first thing we do is we check to see if it's got any deal breakers. Like we just don't buy flood affected properties. It's just that's a hard and fast rule for us. Then we go, okay, well, is it in the right price? Is it in the right zone, for us to even consider, or is it overpriced? It's ridiculous. If it's sort of in the right zone for it to be a good deal, then we can go, okay, well, let's take a look at this.
Okay.
Then we go, well, does it suit? Is it worth buying? Like, is it a good block that we can add value to, do a granny flood on, subdivide? What's the value proposition in this? Is it just a great price where we're like, this is a good deal, we're picking up some equity on the way in, perhaps buying it below value? Or is it a property that we're like, okay, this needs renovation, but from doing the renovation, we can go, if we're buying it at this price, let's say we bought it at 800,000 is the price, but we can spend 20,000 on it, but that's going to add $50,000 on top of the 20,000.
So much more value.
So we're able to force the value and create that equity. Then we can use that equity for the next property as well. We can pull that equity and sort of leapfrog to the next one without having to come up with deposits all the time or just waiting for the market to grow.
I really like what you just said there on the essentially like manufacturing equity, right? Because when it comes to property investment, I'll say the vast majority think of buy and hold, right? Buy and hold and pray that the market goes up. And honestly, look at the last 30 years, that has been the case, right? So it's been good. But you can
It's funny
enjoy
that you say that.
Yeah.
We call it the BHP strategy. Buy, hope, pray.
Buy, hope, and pray, right? Yeah, awesome. And it has worked out, and I guess it'll continue to work out because you just have to look at the underlying fundamentals of why it keeps going up. Because of population, and we continue to have all-time high overseas net migration, then people need a place to live. And I know Aussies, the government, they only let skilled migrants to come in. So these people are essentially workers earning salaries, and they need a place, and it will just keep going up. So that's a fair strategy. But imagine when you do that with what you just said. We get the BHP strategy with the manufacturing equity. Boom, that's like a double whammy in terms of
the
wealth
underlying
creation.
Fundamental reason why you want to buy any property is you want it to grow. You want it to have that natural growth in the market. That should be the baseline. Like, you don't want to be buying it in an area. Let's say it's a very remote regional area, small country town. And you're like, I found this great renovator that I can add. Do a renovation, add 50 grand to it. But it never grows for 10 years. It never grows for 15 years. And I've seen that. And you're like, well, we'll get this, positive cash flow of $20 a week. What's the point? Like, you could do much better things with your money where you get that underlying growth in the market, and the adding the value just gets you there helps you get there a little bit quicker. You're able to push it faster. I mean, it's not for everyone as well. Like, some people aren't comfortable with doing some renovations. Some people just want nothing to do, and so it comes back to their risk profile. Some people I want something that's 5-10 years old, doesn't need painting, got a nice kitchen, I could see myself living in it, and I'm just happy to wait that 10, 15, 20 years. It's a long-term hold. And we know when we look back that the market has, over the last sort of 70 plus years, has continued to grow. And, the saying used to be, it doubles every 7 to 10 years. So we can sort of see that as a bit of a trend anyway, that it has sort of somewhat followed that line. But if we want to push it a little bit further and get there a little bit quicker, well, we can do that with the add value through renovation. Or it might be buying the right block where we can add a granny flat to it, which...
And do you provide that service, that value, that add-on value through Y Property?
Yeah, so we help with renovations. We do that for a number of clients. Right. We connect them with trades that we use, so trusted trades. And with granny flats, we help. We've got builders that we've connected with and we've known for a long time who can do the granny flat or help with even like a subdivision sort of strategy. So we don't necessarily do the subdivision ourselves, but we've got people that we can connect. So it's about, it's like us, right? I don't do the mortgage for people or the accounting, I sort of stay in my lane, but we use people that we know and trust to help with the whole process.
All right, so the $1 million question, right? Australian expats, 2026 to 2027. Where are we buying?
Where are we buying?
Yeah.
So we still, on a state level, we still see a lot of value around Brisbane. Brisbane still is massively undersupplied. We have the upcoming Olympics in 2032, which is only going to compound the issue that we have of not enough rental properties, not enough properties to buy in the area. And then we've also been going quite hard on Victoria. Okay. Victoria, for different reasons, we see that as being massively undervalued. I mean, we're still buying houses there for, high fives.
Okay.
Early,
it used to be
6s to 7s.
It used to be the second most expensive state behind Sydney not too long ago, I feel.
Yeah.
Now it's like one of the lowest or the lowest.
It is.
Yeah.
I can't buy the same sort of properties in Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane.
Yeah.
Like you're right. Sydney and Melbourne are the two biggest capital cities. So why is it at the bottom? It's never been like that before, but all markets go through cycles.
Yeah.
And we've seen a little bit of growth because we were buying some houses. We bought some sub 400s. Now that same sort of house is maybe around that mid fives in that same condition, So we've seen that early signs of growth. I think we'll be going through this sort of little bit of a lull period or bit of a pause in the market since the budget. So I think that growth that was happening will sort of slow down over the next little while, but it's still massively undervalued. And whenever we see stuff that is undervalued, it's only a matter of time until it catches.
Now you say that, right? So I've been in Hong Kong for 10 years now. I came from Perth, Western Australia.
Yeah.
Okay, this is 10 years ago. We had a mining bust.
Yes.
Okay, resource boom dragged Perth to parity with Sydney prices, median prices at the height of the mining boom, and then it bust, and then we went through a decade of almost like a mini price recession or consolidation. So it actually took 10 years before the prices started to really ramp up again. And then in the last few years, we did see prices in Perth go double-digit growth year on year, to a point where it is now, amazing growth. But yes, I think with Melbourne, I know it's only a matter of time because it's now it's the cheapest state now in median prices.
Yeah.
But can you explain what was the reason for Melbourne being so low on the prices now?
Yeah, really good question, because I get this question a little bit, and so really what happened, and it goes back to sort of COVID. We had Victoria had some massively strict lockdowns. People were trying to flee the state essentially because it was really harsh what was happening there. And so we had a lot of clients reach out to us and go, hey, can you get me something in Queensland? Can you get me something in New South Wales? Anywhere, so we can sort of, as soon as we can get out, we're moving. So that was the first thing. But then when we sort of started during COVID, see the market pick up, people really were attracted to the higher rental yields. So that's why we saw Brisbane, and Brisbane was a little bit of delayed growth. I think that was a long time coming, but we saw much more solid rental yields back then in Brisbane, Perth, and so that's when that growth really started to ramp up, and also Adelaide. So investors started to look at those areas and go, well, that makes more sense. I can buy more property. I can afford to hold it easier. Everyone thought sort of Victoria stunk because of the lockdowns and people were moving away. So it really, really impacted Melbourne, obviously. And
was that from anything from the tax perspective as well that would have hampered it, like vacancy tax or land tax or anything like that?
Kind of over time, land in terms of land tax, Victoria's got quite a low land tax threshold. I believe it's around $40,000 or so, 50,000. Yeah, exactly. So
it's every property.
Yeah. So if you have multiple properties in Victoria, they kind of consider the whole land value, and then you might get pushed to a higher bracket. So it's got kind of a very low land tax threshold compared to places like Queensland, New South Wales, even Western Australia. And now they have, things like absentee owner surcharge, which does only apply to kind of foreign nationals, so not the Australian citizens or PRs. but it is kind of an extra layer to think about as well. So probably from the tax perspective, that's some of the levers.
So with that as well, with the land tax,
Mm.
because we've been buying in Victoria, and we, like I said, we've bought a lot in WA, in Adelaide, New South Wales. We've got people based all around.
Yeah.
But with the land tax and how we thought about that when we decided to push clients more that way.
Yeah.
We push clients that way because we think it will do really well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we're paying this extra land tax, and let's say that the price that we're buying a house for is around that sort of 500,000 or 600,000. It sort of equates to the land tax being around an extra $2,000 a year, right? And we go, well, that's an extra cost, it hurts the cash flow. But then we sort of have a look at other areas and compare it to different places. So a lot of people were buying North Queensland around sort of Townsville, Rocky, places like this. And go, well, it doesn't have, why wouldn't I buy there as opposed to Victoria? Well, it sort of balances out. Because there, Northern Queensland, you're paying insurances that are about $2,000 or $3,000 higher because there's a lot of cyclones and weather and flooding there. So their insurance premiums are a lot higher. And then you go, well, WA is a different sort of instance there where the property management fees are quite a bit higher. They're charging sort of sometimes between 11 and 15%, where in, let's say, Victoria or Brisbane, they're sort of around that sort of 7 to 8%. New South Wales is lower, so it sort of swings and roundabouts. With
it's kind of like a holistic view, I think. Like you said, Mark, land tax is just one factor, and different states have different thresholds. But like you said, other outgoings may be more in other states, so it does balance out. So again, it's kind of doing that due diligence before you maybe buy something, looking at the land tax implications. Maybe you have someone else on the title as well who's a foreigner PR, and thinking about how it applies across the states. So it's really important, like you said, Mark, and it's definitely other considerations as well in terms of what you're paying on the property, the expenses.
I suppose, let's say it's an extra $2,000 a year, right? And so we were buying... When we first went there about 2 years ago, so let's say that client who first bought at around sort of 400,000, low fours, and that property is now sitting around $6 to $650, and they've paid $2,000 a year. They've paid it $4,000, but the property's gone up, $200 to $250. It's like, probably behind that,
exactly.
$4,000 if I'm going to make that sort of gain, right?
Exactly.
It's like the optics sometimes, like
sometimes,
But then, like if you understand the underlying numbers, it makes it can dwarf that those fees. So actually, let's bring this back full circle, and we use a real life case study. Okay, so let's say we picture a real Australian expat couple in Singapore, 42 years old, married couple with 2 young kids, and earning Singapore dollars in income, and they want to buy a property in Melbourne. All right. So typically they would try to go to, for example, a buyer's agent who doesn't know their borrowing capacity. They'll go back to their bank back home who doesn't understand her income, and then maybe they'll go to they'll panic and call their accountant only in July of the financial year. But what if they came and spoke to a one-stop shop sort of expert? So let's see what that would look like.
Sure.
And let's say if they came to you first, Mark, this hypothetical couple, and how would you have first approached it?
Well, a lot of people don't come to me first. They usually go to the broker. But let's say they did come to me. I would send them back to you, being an expat, and to Alan, because first of all, they need to probably see Alan first, I suppose, to see what entity they're going to be buying in.
All right, so let's say this couple goes to you first, Alan. Yeah. Let's make this a little bit more interesting. So this Singapore couple, right? It's an Australian citizen and a Singaporean citizen. All right, the spouse is not Australian.
Yeah. So again, it's kind of hitting home on, what's the cost of the purchase? Is there going to be any red flags, extra stamp duty surcharge? Is there any exemptions if I buy with, my Australian spouse? So kind of go through that planning, basically giving our clients or new clients all the data points so they know what they're in for in terms of a cost perspective. So particularly if there's couples, and it's quite normal where there's one Australian citizen and then one foreign national, then again, we need to think about things like not just stamp duty, the normal stamp duty, but the stamp duty surcharge that could be applied on that foreign national share if she or he were to buy with that Australian citizen. So again, for a lot of those permutations of couples, we advise potentially to just have the Australian citizen on the title, but maybe the foreign national can be on the loan as well, contributing. So that's quite a typical setup. Then we need to think about, if the foreigner's on the title, things like land tax as well, what kind of land tax surcharges.
So it's their first one, and it's a hypothetical situation.
Yep.
So it's obviously case by case, very much. But would you normally suggest that maybe buying in personal name would, if it's their first property, or would you suggest with these changes trust or even company?
Yeah,
I mean it's very
it's a great question because there's so many entities and structures now. And it's kind of a case by case question. But in terms of the factors you would take into account, a lot of people may want that tax benefit of having, for example, losses built up. Again, if you do buy the kind of secondary builds nowadays, you can't use it against future Australian wages. But that may not be such an issue for people who are, say, non-residents, kind of long-term non-residents. So people may want to kind of build up the losses so that they can use it against rental property income later on. So in that way, they may want it in their personal names as opposed to maybe a company or a trust where it's kind of trapped into those entities. I guess other considerations are looking at, the tax rates across the different entities. So because of the kind of budget changes on the trust level now, they're kind of imposing a 30% tax on the trustee level. So previously trusts did have their place, potentially for asset protection, potentially for streaming, income to maybe lower tax beneficiaries and lower tax brackets. Now the playing field is leveled a bit more. In terms of companies, again, people like that kind of 25%, 30% flat tax rate. It sounds good, but I think Ben may know as well, there's come some financing hurdles also on the trust side of things. So if you do need that financing, then it may not be a good route to go down. But again, some people have their reasons for putting things in trust and companies. They want that separation as well. But there are some kind of compliance hurdles to go through as well for those entities. So for example, if you do buy a property in a company, you need a kind of Australian resident director who I believe on the financing side needs to be on board with the loan as well. So there's kind of different cases, if you need the financing or not, what your future plans are, kind of what your existing tax rate is as well, because
so many moving parts.
many moving parts. So I haven't given you the kind of magical answer, but it's definitely worth speaking to someone at least, because it takes into account a lot. What's your plans? Is it to be overseas for 10, 15 years? Is it to go back soon? I
think that's a really good answer, because at the end of the day, that's why there's not one fixed answer. Because if there was, you'd just go, well, I'm just going to do that.
Exactly.
And that's why it's so important to talk to yourself. Because if you're an expat, there's so many factors to take into account and situations where whether you're moving back anytime soon or not, and it's going to mean it's a different answer for each person, right?
Exactly, so that's where Ben slots in as well on the mortgage side. So he has kind of a very acute understanding of the financing across these entities, depending on what you want to achieve.
Let's just say hypothetically you've had a chat with them, you've discussed all the pros and cons, and we've just decided that buying in a personal name in this instance is going to be the best outcome for them. Then Ben, what would you?
I would have guided them to be in personal names, to be honest, because if they need financing, a lot of the banks will only now finance you if you're living overseas in personal names.
Right.
It's getting more and more difficult over the last several years to finance in a trust structure or
Sure.
company structure. And most times when I do speak with our clients, they don't have an Australian tax director, resident director, and it doesn't make sense for them to do a trust structure. They don't have the beneficiaries to even allow for that. And so, or even like, the upkeep costs from the tax to maintain that company compliance and trust compliance. Most time it makes a lot more sense to just buy in personal names, nice and simple, and all of the banks in Australia love it. Okay, and it's more favorable from a credit lending perspective. So let's say this hypothetical couple comes to me next to have a chat. Most of the times, a lot of people do not have $1.5 million just sitting in a bank account to just buy cash outright. They do need financing. And so if you need financing, we need to go to a bank that will actually accept you. And most time it's going to be in personal names. So with that in mind, it's personal names. We can see that there's one foreign couple and one Australian citizenship, a citizen. We're going to try to buy that in Australian citizen's name. Okay, for two reasons. One, more lender options. But two, it saves on the foreign stamp duty surcharge. If you have the foreign on the title, the stamp duty surcharge is 8 to 9% more. On a $1 million property, that's extra 80, 90,000 more if you just have the citizen on there. Or if it's 50-50 split, that's still like $45,000. Who wants to pay that? So if you have a rock solid marriage and you trust the other person, I'll be like, we can just put it, in your name, Alan, if you're an Australian citizen. And I will just support on the side. Because a lot of people thinking, oh, well, we need to buy in joint names because we're both earning income and you need my income to support the loan. But with some clever structuring and finding the right lender, there are certain lenders that understand that if you are a married couple, that they will allow the second person who may not be on the title of the loan to still come onto the loan application and be a co-borrower. So we call that one on title, two on application. Okay, so we can still have the Australian citizen on title, but two as borrowers, and that can help service the loan. So we will try to guide to try to find that right lender and put them through there. And because this couple is from Singapore, we'll try to find a lender that understands Singapore income tax rates. Because again, it's just as low as Hong Kong, up to 22% marginal income tax rates. So versus the 45%. But it doesn't have to be the case. So we'll assess the full situation. And if their household income is so high such that we can go with one of the harsher lenders, we will do that if it has a lower interest rate. So this is what we call like lender sequencing, whereby we may go with even the harsher ones if it makes sense, because of the lower rates or the better package or what case may be. And then we know at the back of our mind they still want to buy a second or third or fourth property. We still have those
harsher. Does that mean they're more strict with their criteria?
Yes, from the income perspective.
Yeah.
If they still would do the 20% discount off the FX and then apply the 45% Australian income tax rates, I may still take them there. Yeah. If the rates are lower or for convenience sake, if they're already banking with that, we would do that. And then we will still have the lenient lenders at the back of our mind when they want to expand their portfolio. So there's some lender sequencing stuff that we can do there. Because these are some of the irreversible mistakes that I was talking about before. If a lot of people don't know, they buy jointly with their foreigner spouse, sign a contract, unconditional contract. Because as you know, if you're buying in the eastern states, some like, Sydney, Melbourne, like some of they just have a 4-day cooling off period and boom, you can quickly go straight into unconditional. And if you sign it like that, then that's an irreversible mistake.
And it can be extremely hard to get out of contracts in WA. Essentially, I mean, you've got a finance and a building and pest clause, but essentially, once you sign the contract, you're pretty much moving forward on it. Like they're very difficult to get out of those. Queensland's a lot more lenient with that, but so you can make those irreversible mistakes, like you said, and the only way to reverse it once you buy the property is to sell the property, right? And then you've got exit costs and stuff.
Like either you go through the purchase or you just give up your deposit. Like you gotta factor in like what is the thing that will cost you less.
There's a lot at stake.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, you could run away and then and then obviously just be blacklisted for the rest of your life in Australia. But this is why, you know, we come talk to the experts. Make sure you get your ducks in a row, not make any of these mistakes. The structuring side, the lending side, and obviously, you know, I would then take this couple to a lender, submit the application, and get the pre-approval. Pre-approval is a formal letter from the bank saying, hey, we've assessed your entire application. Not a fake pre-approval. There are some lenders that just do a snapshot of your thing and just issue you a letter within a few days. No, we've got to do a full pre-approval assessment, whereby the bank's committed based on your financial situation. If it doesn't change over the next, you know, 6 months, because the pre-approval can be valid for up to 6 months, they will stand by their word and actually give you the financing. Once you have that pre-approval letter, ideally, that's when, you know, you'd be speaking them up. But or even once we submit the application without the pre-approval letter, because once we submit an application, we're already very confident that we'll be able to get you that lending, because otherwise it's just a waste of everyone's time. We'd only submit an application if we're sure everything will line up and you'll get the lending that you need. So once we submit an application, the next step, speak to a buyer's agent. Okay. So that's when we click on over to Mark. You know, and I guess you have your checklist and all that, right?
And obviously having that budget is super important. I mean, like if we've got a budget of 1.1, well, then that sort of rules out buying anything at, you know, 1.2, 1.3 if that's hard and fast. So that's why it's so important to obviously go through this process first. And even if they don't get that full pre-approval, but they've spoken to you and you're like, oh man, this is a slam dunk. We can definitely get this amount. Because you guys obviously know, you work with lenders all the time, and you get a really clean application that you're like, well, we can get that for sure. We know the criteria. We can start working on that straight away. And from there, it's essentially going, well, we start a little bit backwards rather than starting, well, what property do you want? It's like, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve over the next sort of, you know, whether it's immediately to sort of 10-year plan and work backwards from there. Because if they're wanting to scale their portfolio, you don't want to be buying the wrong type of property that's going to pull up that, you know, you don't want to buy a property that's going to stop them moving to the next property and the next property. So, and then it's about a matter of understanding what they're comfortable with as well, like we spoke about before, whether they're open to doing renovation or adding a second dwelling, if that's something they're interested in, or whether they're the sort of investor who is just more, I want nothing to, like we just want something very vanilla, very nothing to do, I don't want any maintenance.
So it's very personalized. Everyone has their different risk appetite, kind of goals. So
there's definitely no one strategy fits all. From a personal point of view, what they're comfortable with and what they're wanting to do, but also what they're wanting to achieve as well. So, I mean, obviously, you know, some people are a lot more aggressive, or they've got able to hold more negative cash flow, and they might want to go down the path of looking for those properties that are bigger land where they can have the option down the track to develop and add extra dwellings to them. Like I said, other people are just wanting, you know, I want nothing to do. I don't want any headache. I don't want to hear about it. I'll hear about it in 20 years when it comes time to sell, you know. So, and then we obviously go and search like we spoke about before.
Yeah, awesome.
If you've watched this far, you can feel the theme. Buying Australian property as an expat isn't hard because the deals are bad. It's hard because the pieces don't talk to each other. That's the whole reason Odin and Why Property work the way we do. Buying, mortgage and tax in one place before you've committed to anything. If you want this mapped to your own situation, your income, your real borrowing power, your tax position, we do a free assessment where we run your actual numbers. Links below. Don't wait until you've signed a contract to find out where you stand.